Hi, I'm Chad with Move Forward Guitar. This lesson is from our series Music Theory for Guitar. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to harmonize the major scale with triads. First off, download our free e-guide, Music Theory for Guitar. It contains everything that I'm talking about in this lesson, all the charts and diagrams, as well as much more, so it'll be really useful to you. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to just go download that. But I am working on it right now as I'm filming this lesson, so it may not be available as you're watching this lesson. And if it's not available yet, it'll say coming soon. And if you'd like to get notified when it is available, you can sign up for our mailing list and we'll send you a notification for when it is available and let you download it. And also, if you're signed up for our mailing list, you'll receive all updated versions as well. But don't worry, you don't need the e-guide to follow along with this lesson because all the charts and diagrams will be on the screen. And also, we add at least one new lesson every day, so be sure to subscribe. This is part 2.15 from our series Music Theory for Guitar. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So at this point, if you've gone through this series, you should understand the harmonized major scale. And when I'm talking about the harmonized major scale in these lessons, I'm talking about harmonizing the scale with triads. And you know that that gives you major triad for the 1, minor for the 2, minor for the 3, major 4, major 5, minor 6, diminished 7. So now that you understand the theory behind it, I'm going to show you how to actually harmonize it with triads by showing you a diagram of the fretboard. And this is something you'll be able to practice and play these triads and be able to hear what it actually sounds like. So here is a G major scale. And all the red notes are your root, just like they have been this whole time. And if you were to play this scale, you could play it on one string or you could play patterns like I showed you. But if you were to play it just as a scale, you would play the first note, second note, third note, and so on, and just play them in order. But to harmonize the scale, you're going to play 2 or more notes at the same time. And like I mentioned, when I'm talking about harmonized major scale for this lesson, I'm talking about harmonizing it with triads. So what you're going to do is actually play through this scale note by note, but while you're playing triads. And we're going to start in root position, and we'll start on the 6th, 5th, and 4th string, but it doesn't matter what string sets you're starting on. This applies for any of the string sets. So if you start in root position, if you see right here, you should be able to visualize that that is a major triad in root position. And since we're in the key of G, that's a G major triad. So before, when we were taking these triads and moving them up the neck, we were moving them to their inversion. So we would take the root and move it to the 3, take the 3, move it to the 5, take the 5 and move it to the root. So if we did that, looking at this diagram, our root would go to the 3, our 3 would go to the 5, and our 5 would go to the root, and then you would end up with this shape, which was first inversion. But in this lesson, we're not going to the inversions. We're staying in root position, and we're going to go through all the chords of the major scale. So we're going to start with G major in root position, and then each one of these notes is just going to go up to the next closest note in the scale. And what happens when you do that is you get a minor triad. Because the harmonized major scale starting on the 2nd note of the major scale gives you a minor triad. Starting on the 1st note gives you major. That goes back to our diagram, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. And then you just keep doing that. From this minor triad, you go up to the next closest note in the scale with each one of these notes. And again, you end up with a minor triad right there. Because playing a triad built off the 3rd note of the major scale gives you minor. And do it again and again, and you're going to end up with that harmonized major scale with triads. And I'll show you this one by one so it's easier to visualize. So here we are starting in root position. This is a G major triad in root position on the 6th, 5th, and 4th string. You would play this chord, and then you would move up to the next note of the scale with each one of these notes. So like I said, your root's going to go to the next note, your 3's going to go to the next note, your 5's going to go to the next note. And what you end up when you do that is with a minor triad. So now it's an A minor triad because the G major scale is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. It starts over at G. So the first chord would be a G major, second chord would be an A minor. Do it again, you'd be on B because that's the next note of the scale. You get a B minor. Do it again, you'd be on C, so that's a C major. Do it again, you get a D, that's D major. Again, that's E, E minor. Do it again, that's F sharp, that's an F sharp diminished. And then you end back at G major, one octave higher than where you started. So all we're doing when we're harmonizing the scale is moving each note up to the next closest note in the scale, and that's what gives us our major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. And a little easier way to think about it, instead of thinking about each note moving up to the next closest note, all you have to think about is the major scale on your lowest note. So right here we're starting on the 6th string. If you visualize your major scale as whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, like you should know at this point, that's how you build a major scale. You just have to visualize the lowest note going to each of those, and then you just have to have it memorized that the first chord is major, second is minor, third is minor, fourth is major, fifth is major, sixth is minor, seventh is diminished. So that tells you that if you're starting on the 1, you have major, you go to the 2, you get a minor. So the only thing you have to move in the shape is the 3. So you move the shape up to the next note of the scale, and you move the third, which is the second note in this voicing, back 1/2 fret, and that gives you the minor. Then you're going to the next chord in the scale, you keep the same shape, go to the next chord in the scale, you move that third back up because it's a major. Next chord is the same shape. Next chord you move that third back because it's minor. Next chord you move the 5th back because that's the diminished location. The 7th chord is diminished. And then next chord you move it back into the shape of major. So I recommend trying that. Just start in root position, start in this key if you want to make it easy since you have the diagram, and move it up and listen to it. You'll hear that it's the major scale, but you'll hear that it's the major scale using chords instead of single notes. And then you can do it for every string set. So if we were going to stay in the key of G, we would find our root location on the next set of strings, which would be the 5th, the 4th, and the 3rd. So our root location is obviously where the red note is, and we would take our major triad, which lies right here, and we would do the same process. We would just move it up. So start in root position, move up to the next note, that's minor, next is minor, then major, and then anytime you run out of room on your fretboard, you can just go back an octave and start in octave lower. So now we're on the major location again, which is the 5th. It's the 5 chord. Move up to the 6th chord, you're on minor. Move it to 7 chord, that's diminished. And then you're back at major on the 1 chord. And you can do that through all the string sets. And not only can you do it in root position, you can do it in each of the inversions. So for example, here is G major in first inversion. Now when you move this up through the harmonized major scale, your third is right here, so that's the note that needs to move back as you hit minor locations. So this is the major shape. If you move up to the 2 chord, which is minor, that 3 goes back half a step in that shape because it's a flat 3 for minor, as you know, and so that's your new shape. And then you take that up, the next one is minor, so the 3 chord's minor, it stays the same. Next one's major, the 4 chord is major, so that 3 has to move back up half a step. 5 chord is major, 3 stays where it is, so that shape stays the same. 6 chord is minor, we've doubled back an octave because we're about to run out of room. So that 3 goes back, you have that minor shape. 7 chord is diminished, so your 3 stays where it was for the minor, but your 5 goes back because a diminished chord has a flat 5. And then you would just end back on the major 1 again. And you can do the same thing with the open triads. It's just the exact same concept. And then you just need to know where your 5 and your 3 are because those are what change when you go from major to minor to diminished. So if you go from a major to a minor, you move the 3 back half a step. If you go from minor to diminished, you move the 5 back half a step. And that's how you harmonize the major scale with triads. So I recommend trying this out. Just pick a key and pick a major triad in close position to start with, and just take it through the harmonized major scale and see what it sounds like, and it'll be a very familiar sound to you because our ears are very accustomed to that sound. They're accustomed to the major scale, and they're accustomed to it being played as a harmonized major scale with triads. So now you have the ability to play any chord in the major scale up and down the whole fretboard using triads. And all you have to know is where your root lands, because that'll tell you what key you're in, and then you have to be able to see which one are your third and fifth, because those are the ones that move when you move from major to minor to diminished. But all those diagrams are in the e-guide. You'll have that to reference anytime you need, anytime you get stuck or have a question. So just be sure to download that e-guide. And you can move on to the next lesson where I'm going to show you how to harmonize a major scale with interval shapes. So instead of harmonizing it with triads with 3 notes, we're going to harmonize it with interval shapes with just 2 notes. And it's going to be the interval shapes that I showed you early in this series. So again, download that e-guide for reference and be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day.